Good morning. Welcome, replay viewers. This is Ryan from Parent Dome, giving you a quick little update on my backwards countdown. Oh, let me turn my camera around. So we're on shift change. Boop, bear with me for a second. And the nurses are all gathering in front of my room because they're preparing for the shift change and transferring information from patients that I want to give them their privacy. So, last night was, you know what, I'm going to not walk around here because it's going to be busy, so let me get out of here for a bit. Last night was uneventful in the hospital, but eventful online. So I'm going through the chemo, beginning the scope, I showed all the stuff that's hanging and had some interesting side effects. I already have a heart anomaly. I've had it since birth. It started manifesting itself when I was in my teens. Became symptomatic when I was in probably 24, 25. Wound up blacking out while I was driving. That was really dangerous. Fortunately, I was able to. It was a freak thing. Nobody got hurt. I was able to get off the side of the road. The car itself was able to get off of the side of the road, and my speed slowed down that I didn't hurt anyone. But that put me in the hospital for 3 weeks to figure out what it was and identify it being into my heart, and going through a series of testing, identifying that I had MVP and some other stuff, which they wanted to put a pacemaker in, but they didn't. But last night, taking one of these meds, sent my heart nuts. Totally sent my heart nuts. And so we had to deal with the EKG being pulled out of the room into another location for some additional testing, meet with the cardiology department, and they were freaking out. I'm like, no, don't freak out. My heart is okay. This is normal for me. I'm just reporting it to you, but it's just a little bit more intense. And when they got that EKG, they're like, dude, you got way much going on. I was like, yeah, but if you check it to my baseline when I started, you're going to see very little change between my baseline and for when I'm here. And they went to the baseline before my treatment, and they said, whoa, your baseline is pretty much like you are now, just the frequency is more. And I said, I know. So that's what you're seeing. So we had that whole discussion. I shared with you the security issue. That's okay. And last night it afforded me the time I was on steroids, so I didn't sleep much at all. I was catching like naps that are 15 to 30 minutes long. But when I was in the awake period, I was on social media. And as I talk about internet safety, from the dangers, risks, threats, and permanence, what happens inside there, I go after those that are the threat. I mean, my goal is to educate parents to protect their children from these threats. Many of the threats are children's peers. There's another side of the threat, which is the adults. These are the predators and the pedophiles. So last night, I was on social media identifying the behavior of those two types of people. And I found a bunch of them. And I wound up, as people that participate, hey Lynn, good to see you. As people that come in and participate in my scope, and they learn that I enforce terms of service, it's amazing, out of breath. I enforce the terms of service of the social media platform that I'm in, that they wind up, if they break those terms of service, they violate them inside my broadcast, they're put into a process which is about helping them recognize their behavior, modify their behavior, and go in a different direction. It's called accountability. I hold people accountability to their behavior inside my broadcast. Now, for many, they're not used to being held accountable. They're used to operating in a world of invisibility, anonymity, and that they can say whatever they want whenever they want. And that's true. We do have the ability to say whatever we want whenever we want to. However, this belief that you are free from the consequences of what you say is not real. So it's not whether you can, it's whether you should. And you make those decisions in yourself as to whether you should say something or should do something. That's up to you. But when you come into my sphere, or I go into your sphere, and I see that behavior, I think I gotta sit down for a second. You see that, I see that happen. I take those people into my process, and I hold them accountable. So, sorry. Just the other day I was involved in a conversation, and I did a broadcast, and it was like, how do you validate that an atheist has sound reasoning? What is the basis of an atheist's sound reasoning? And the question was based upon presuppositional thinking. It's a form of philosophy, and some people are familiar with presuppositional apologetics, as it's called. Some people are not. And there were a couple of people in the broadcast that had a level of knowledge of presuppositional apologetics, and it wound up getting shared on Twitter. And one of the things about presuppositional apologetics is the ability to discern whether someone knows logic to make a bridge into morality. Morality is the thing that is a difficult thing for atheists to point where morality comes from. And they typically borrow from an outside worldview as to how something is moral, because morality is in contradiction of Darwinian theory, or what they try to espouse as Darwinian law, which it is not a law because there is not evidence to support it being law. It's Darwinian theory. They try to pull information from outside their own worldview and argue it. But regardless of that, I had some things happen on my Twitter profile that were calling attention to that, and I wound up being shared to somebody who apparently has a pretty good audience, that communicates on YouTube, does interviews with people. This is a person that apparently identifies as having been in the past a fundamental Christian that turned into an atheist. And to me, that's a conflict in itself, because once you're in Christ, you cannot unravel yourself from being in Christ. Once you have been snatched by God, you cannot unwrestle out of the Creator's hand. So my view would be that they weren't really in God's hands to begin with. They were in a creation of their own mind that met their own mental challenges of an idol in which they created of God to jump into the family of those of God. These are my views and my opinions, and so that self-identification kind of came sideways with me. But they were wanting to. A couple of them were talking and saying, "Get this guy in an interview," kind of thing. But they did it in a way mocking the hat that I was wearing. I was like, "Why are you making fun of the hat? What's the big deal about the hat? Maybe he should wear a hat during the interview." I was like, the hat? Are you making fun of the fact that I wear a hat because I'm in cancer? I mean, that doesn't sound like a nice way to build a basis of conversation to try to poke fun at the fact that I'm wearing a hat. And then they came back with they said that's a kind of a wrong presupposition, and I said, hey, that's true. I can't argue with that. So I typed LOL. When they came back with that, I was like, LOL. I'm willing to have a conversation privately to determine what the rules of a conversation would look like, but not offer myself into the public foray of YouTube because I've seen how the YouTube presentations have been shared on social media. So it was interesting. So we'll then have the conversation, but it was an interesting view. So I spent a tremendous amount of time last night. See, this is ADD chemo brain going off. I should have joined the service. I did join the service. I went into the service and I was selected into an unusual portion, unusual field. They felt I would be suited in a particular area based upon my particular testing and testing results. And when I was going through the service, that is where my heart problem manifested itself. I was an oorah gung-ho kind of guy, and when I was going through my training, I was kind of excelling and exceeding and leading, and I was viewed as leadership potential, and I was constantly challenged in that leadership potential, and that's when my heart problem really manifest itself. And the military had said, we cannot take this risk with you as much as we want you to continue here. You're a liability, because in a leadership position, you can be taken down at any moment by your own, not that you would be could be taken down by enemies, but you could be, yeah, kind of. It was prior to that. If they didn't want to take responsibility, so they asked me for a different level of separation, which is totally fine. They pointed me in a different direction, and they took me from the military relationship to more of a security relationship, which I was open to. I was open to that, and it worked out well for me. I think I have to head back. I got something going on, and it's not feeling so good. And I'm not dripping chemo at the moment, so I think my platelets I know my platelets are low. That's what it is. My platelets and hemoglobin are low, and that's what I'm feeling. Dang it. I told my nurses that I want no blood from California. I want no blood from the state of California, because Governor Jerry Moonbeam has removed it from being a felony for donators of blood to not disclose that they have an autoimmune disease. That's horrible. I'm so sorry about hearing that. It's a horrible thing. That's horrible. Such a young age. So if a patient provides blood and they have HIV, they don't have to disclose that they have HIV. They don't have to disclose that they have HIV and have intercourse with someone. So that's not a felony anymore. It used to be a felony if you would infect someone with the disease. Not anymore in California. So if you donate blood, and the blood is an HIV patient in California comes to me in where I am, and I hang it and I take it in, so it's not too bad. Why? So I said, not happening. I want no California blood. I don't want those fruits and nuts coming into my body. Forget that. So, based upon the time I had last night, off hours, I wound up getting into a lot of these late night broadcasts and seeing what we all know happens, those young children broadcasting with their parents having no visibility, doing prank scopes and dance scopes, not really saying anything of consequence in the broadcast, filled with men asking these young girls to go into private broadcasts, ask them for their Snapchat and Instagram accounts, to friend them on Snapchat and Instagram. And previously I talked about how sexual predators, the common word to define their behavior is called grooming. And I said, in my opinion, a better word is cultivate, because grooming doesn't provide an indication that it's something that is happening repeatedly, premeditatedly, and expressing volume. Grooming is very one-on-one I'm going to groom myself. I'm not going to groom other people.